Welcome, 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 everyone. So glad that you're here for the Many Deaths of the Living with our guest, Ari Abraham. So today is October 30th, and that means we're in the peak of autumn.
Mm.
It's a time of change, and this season really invites us to slow down. It's that shift as the light begins to fade, as the air begins to cool, and as nature begins its descent. And with that, let's take a moment to collectively slow down and come into this moment together. So let's take a moment to feel our feet on the ground or any part of our bodies that is making contact with the surface below it. And allow the body to rest and settle right here in this moment. We'll collectively take 3 breaths together, in and out through the nose, in through the nose, and out. In and out. In and out. You're welcome to maintain your eyes closed or gaze lowered for a few more moments. So, October 30th, this time of transition and change. Across cultures, this time of the year has always been sacred, from Samhain to Dia de los Muertos and Diwali. People have gathered to honor the dance between light and dark, death and rebirth. And so tonight's conversation is for anyone who finds themselves at a crossroads, standing in that space between what is ending and what's next. Maybe you're letting go of a relationship, a role, or an old version of yourself. Maybe you're just sensing change coming and you aren't sure what it means yet. Our intention tonight is simple: to explore how to meet endings with awareness rather than fear, how to trust that what falls away is making space for something new, and how the body can guide us through that process. We're joined by Ari Abraham, a storyteller, facilitator, and guide through the liminal. Ari's work bridges the spiritual and the embodied, helping people navigate birth or death, rebirth, and transformation through practice, ritual, and presence. Ari, are you ready to go all in?
I am. Let's
All
do
right,
it.
let's go then. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. And if you'd allow me, I just want to congratulate both you and Tim on this 1 year anniversary um, of the circle. Um, I was just thinking about before getting on this call how I remember all of us being in Connecticut, a little late in the summer, and the three of us were at crossroads of a different kind, and we hadn't quite crossed over the threshold. And I remember then us coming back, and you both dropped the first episode, and so a lot of change for
Mhm.
all of us in that year. So it's
Yeah,
wonderful to be here.
I love that story and I love that connection to the topic of Crossroads. So I think I just want to begin there. So we mentioned last year we had a crossroads around this time of the year. So I'm just curious, what is it about this particular season that feels significant to you? And how do you personally connect with this time of the year?
Yeah, it's an interesting moment. I think, as you said, all cultures and lineages seem to have, even in countries where there aren't seasons necessarily, there is a moment around this time of the year about coming into a sense of incubation impending, right? Or descent or going quiet. And very much tied to that is this act of connecting back to the ancestors. And so in Samhain, that shows up, of course, is this working with the harvest and moving into this space where there's a recognition that the veil is thinning between this space and what's beyond. down to so many cultures doing spirit plates at this time of the year, whether it's ofrenda for Dia de los Muertos or Diwali. We do the same thing, the day before Diwali, and you'll see it happening in Thailand, in other parts of Asia as well. And so there seems to be a common recognition that this is a time where you have an opportunity to look behind you at what can gracefully come to an end as you prepare to think about and be with the things you want to birth coming back out into the spring after
Mm,
this quiet. And we'll get into how this is all connected to the body in a moment, I'm sure. But this is why it's such a beautiful time for me.
yeah. And you often describe yourself as a ferryman. So,
Mm,
a ferryman at the crossroads. What does that mean for you personally? So, like, if you can get specific and even tie back into the first question about how do you personally connect to this time, like, like what are the celebrations or the moments that you are able to take through in this season, and what about it
mhm,
makes it so significant? And then, how do you describe yourself as the ferryman, and what
yeah.
does that mean?
So personally, at this time, I am often in the practice of communicating with my ancestors to say, here are the state of things in my life. Here is the landscape of my life and everything that has come up to this point. Show me show me how to navigate what's next. I
Mhm,
may have these things I think are meant for me, or I want to do, or I want to achieve, or I'm looking to have in my life, but show me how to move in the right direction, and if they're even meant for me, right?
mhm,
And what the crossroads means. We use this phrase very often. I'm at a crossroads,
mhm,
but there is a real esoteric meaning around that. And we'll get into this topic of gatekeepers. I don't want to jump ahead, right? But I think what you just need to understand is when you come to a crossroads, yes, we often see two paths, and we'll get into the topic of the third path, but there is a threshold first. You get there, and there's a line. And then it's the question of being ready and feeling ready to cross that line. And then what will happen is there is a in between space where it's a little unnerving, it's a little unknown. You know, Tim, I know this is something, when we left the retreat last year, you knew you were at the threshold, and then you crossed it in your own time. You entered a time of ambiguity and you emerged, right? And likewise for myself. And then you're reborn. You come out of the next threshold reborn. Now, why a ferryman? Um, well, for the longest time, I fought that. Uh, one of my guides, who you both know, of course, Amir, would often say, "Ferryman, that's a this is the archetype," and I'm like, no, no, thanks. But very slowly through practice and direct experience, it became very clear that this was the gift, and either I could ignore it or embrace it and understand that for most people, when they come to that threshold, it's terrifying. It feels like your life is going to fall apart. And what can help is having someone who says, "Hey, I know this terrain, I know the map, let me just help you." And this has cultural pieces in it, right? Whether it's the popular one of Chiron in Greek mythology, who is waiting on the boat to take you down to the underworld, to to Anubis in the Egyptian cosmology, who's doing the same thing, is guiding you down to help you navigate.
yeah. And thank you for explaining that. And I think that the crossroads, the liminal space, the the intensity of some of those transitions sometimes are very overwhelming. And so let's take a moment here to describe what it is we're talking about. What can be constituted as a crossroads. What are some of the things from small scale to large scale? Right. And
Yeah.
let's bring in some tactical examples here.
Yeah. At a really small scale, I'll use the version of, I know that this job is not right for me and I'm kind of stuck in it, whether it's because I've got golden handcuffs with the money,
Mhm.
or I'm scared, right? That if I leave it, even though I know it's wrong for me, that somehow my life is going to collapse. And that's a really small version of that. And so then the crossing of that threshold never happens. Or if you do, without any sort of guidance, you then free fall and you're sort of unable to find your footing. So that's a small version of a
No, I would
simple
I would
thing that
I would
can,
argue that it's probably still a pretty big version. So
yeah, but
like day to day, right? Like even
oh,
physically,
okay.
like okay, there's a threshold that is my apartment door,
Yeah.
right? Like there's an like let's really break this down.
Okay.
That
Okay.
there's
I
a
see what
there's a version
yeah.
of me right now
Yeah.
that has to cross through the door to get to the other side.
I'll give you the simple version.
Yes.
There's a version of you that can't feel authentic when you step through the door.
Mhm.
You go to work and you're someone else, and you kind of grit your teeth, and you don't allow the authentic version of you to go past that front door,
Mhm.
right? Um, that's a really tactical, I think, small piece that people do every day, right? I don't want to take that guy or woman beyond, whatever archetype, beyond the threshold of my home. Um, and then we come to bigger ones, right? Death, actual, passing of someone you love, relationships ending.
Mhm.
Um, one of I think one of the powerful ones I've also experienced personally and witnessed people in is a death of a version of self.
Mhm.
You know, coming to terms with, oh, I have to let go of this version of me and embrace this new version. I don't know how to move through that.
Yeah, it's interesting
Um,
that you use the word death for something that isn't a mortal passing.
mhm,
So can you
mhm.
break that down a little bit more for us of like when we talk about death in this context, what are we really talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about endings, but real endings where that thing has to be buried or left at the threshold. It can't be carried forward into the in between space, which is a space of preparation, because it can't serve you anymore. It's played its part. And I'll give you an example. Um, I've worked with someone who is really trying to understand how to step from being someone who has been so tied to their role as a mom, and the children are all old enough to move forward with their lives. And now it's a coming to terms with the relationship with themselves as wise woman. And it's hard. There's grief. There's still a thing of like, no, 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 I'm not ready to be this person yet. I still want that, but I also have to let it die.
Right. So it's a death of an identity or a death of a role.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that word death, I mean, as you're describing that, like there's a resistance, there is a little bit of a fear of letting go of that previous identity, that previous role, because the word death can be really scary,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like, oh, this thing will no longer cease to exist, right? It
Right.
is gone and it's done. And so like I think of like why do you think that we as humans tend to be afraid of death or just endings in general? And what is it that is that cause of attachment that's preventing us from moving through the threshold?
So it's because we're also capable of profound love, right? And more often than not, the reason why these things are so hard for us is because we love fully and openly and with deep devotion. Um, a great example is if you watch someone move forward from a relationship really quickly, there's no death then involved. And that typically is either an indication that there's a lot of hurt, right? Or pain or that the the depth of what was there was just different. Not wrong, not right, but different, right? But when we talk about these moments that feel like death, it's very often because there's been a profound love involved in this. And then also there's of course the piece around how at least in the cultures that we are in the Western world, uh, you know, I would take that back. I think in the world where we've become a little bit disconnected from our esoteric roots, right? Because I see this even back home in Asia, etc. Is there is no longer a connection or a healthy relationship with death, right? We've come to a more distant relationship with it because parts of it are hard. I'll share from very personal experience. Um, my deepest experience with death to date now is with my dad. And the pieces I'll speak about is, for example, flying back from Los Angeles and coming back to Malaysia, and my mom opening the door to the apartment they live in and being hit by a smell.
Mhm.
And I remember saying, ah, that's the smell of death, right? And then experiencing the death rattle, hearing it, like all these pieces, right? For most people are things like, oh my God, I read this is so painful. I don't want to touch this. But I do feel that if we can, and part of that is also our if we have a belief system where we believe that that is it, that's the end, then it's even harder. But if you have a belief system where you know it is solely the end of this round, that there's going to be another round of some kind in whatever cosmology you want to believe, then it's a little easier. I wouldn't say it's
Yeah,
very easy. It's
right,
it's a little easier.
right, especially when there's deep love involved or deep,
There's always deep
yeah.
love.
And so
Yeah.
that's interesting. I want to bring in other cultures. I'll just speak for myself as a person born and raised in the United States. Death, the physical death, the only event is a funeral.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it's very sad. It
Yeah.
is about dressing in black, mourning,
Hmm.
grieving, telling sad stories.
Hmm.
And from my understanding of other cultures, there is a component of that in their celebrations of death, but there's also maybe some joy
Hmm.
and festivity. And so I'm curious, like, can you help us understand or talk about some of the different cultural approaches, cultural
Mm.
traditions, and how they celebrate death in ways that help them stay connected to
Yeah.
joy, life, love?
Yeah. Such a good question. Yeah. I mean, when I think about even in the Hindu culture, and I've watched some of my family friends go through that sort of process, right? It's a very look, there's a lot of grief. And I'd even venture, I remember my grandfather's funeral. I mean, there's a wailing, there's like, there's like visceral emotion in the air, right? But then there is also this, I think about the flowers that are present, the fire that is present, and there's a connection to nature that is psychologically sort of imbuing you with this notion of like all of this is just a cycle of life. right? This is natural, it's part of it. And you're right, it's a little different, say, from some of the more sanitized things we're now used to of, a very clean, staid room with a coffin, etc. And then, you're either going to, the only moment of nature might be the burial ground, right? Because if you go to a cremation center, it's also very, and I actually learned something really interesting, even with remains, for example. So when my father was cremated, and we don't just have to talk about death in the physical form, right? We'll
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 come
get
to
there.
some
We'll
other
get there
spots. Yeah,
next.
we'll get there. Um, but I just learned a couple of days ago from a friend because I said, oh, we went to collect the ashes, and they show you the pieces that don't burn fully down, and they're bone, and they'll say, "Oh, do you want to have any of these before we crush them?" And she was like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" She's like, "They invite you there to like look at," and she's like, "We just got ashes." And I was like, "Oh, this kind of makes sense." I was like, "Yeah, this might be just because there culturally there is a tradition of like just, hey, do you want some of these?" And you'll see, even in Mexico for Day of the Dead, right, a lot of families work with their ancestors bones that are always present in the house, right? And I think it's funny because I think it ties to everything else we talk about in this world around this disconnection from nature.
Mhm.
And I think this is a big part of this, is like even in this part of the work there's a disconnection from, all of this
Yeah, yeah.
that's affecting it.
Thank you for explaining a bit about those traditions and sharing that example of, you know, Day of the Dead and the Hindu traditions. So now we'll transition into things other than the physical death. So what I'm interested of what those rituals of the physical death can teach us about our own smaller deaths, the endings in
Mhm.
identity, of love, of purpose, like all these smaller, they're not super small, right? But they may be smaller than the physical death.
Yeah, yeah. I've come to learn, and I'm still learning, that this body is the manifestation of this threshold. And when these things happen, and this is why the work that the circle talks about and the world that, everyone here has tapped into about embodiment is really important. If you don't have this connection to the body, just like if you've lost the connection to nature, when these big events and potent moments of change happen in your life, you either are able to use the body to begin to treat it as the threshold, or you collapse, or you freeze, or you bury it all. And as we like to say in the community we're from, it'll come out sideways. Right? And I've seen this happen, as I'm sure all of you have seen happen, right? Whether it manifests as drinking, whether it manifests as rage, whatever it is. And so I think it's really important to begin to say that the crossroads, yes, there's an esoteric component. We can come to that. But the crossroads is in here. Can you meet yourself as endings happen and use your body as the threshold at which you kneel and begin to alchemize and move through and out the other side?
Mm. So the body as a threshold, internalizing the ending, we'll call it an ending, whether that is the ending of a life, ending of an identity, of a relationship. If we don't allow that ending to move through us, we can internalize it, we can attach, we can cling, all these stuff. So, what might it feel like, or what might it look like for somebody to use their body to move through something?
Yeah. Yeah. So This is a very weird thing I'm about to do.
Mhm.
So, in a show that I love called 6 Feet Under,
Mhm.
one of the characters talks about his sort of like disgust with the way grief is so sanitized, right? And he tells a story about going, I think, to the south of Italy. This coffin of someone who has died is being brought back, but they have to bring it by boat, right? It's somewhere like you're thinking like Sardinia or something. And waiting on the beach are all the women in the community, right? The mothers, the grandmothers, etc. And they're wailing. They're wailing, they're beating the ground, they're beating their chests. And that is one small example. In a culture where if you did that at a funeral, most folks would escort you out,
Mhm.
right? But what you're essentially doing is stifling what the body is trying to express. And the longer you hold that in, you're not moving. You're stuck at the
Mhm.
threshold. You're stuck at the door. And then the question will become, well, are you doing it out of fear, out of proprietary, being well behaved? Now then we go down a path, right, of people pleasing or all the other stuff we come up against in conversations like this. But this is a simple example. Do we stifle the natural expression of the body when something bad happens?
Mhm. And it something just struck me that there is a in the physical death, it's not just about the person or thing that passes that is no longer with us. It's also about us and our relationship to it. And how are we then moving through? Like, if somebody has physically moved through this life and has gone through their own crossroads, they've crossed over the threshold into death and whatever next journey that is for them, right? Depending on whatever you believe in. If we're here in this world and we don't go through our own threshold in relationship to that death, then we're stuck. We're stuck on the other side of the threshold, afraid to step across, to go into that messy middle, that liminal space to get to the other side.
Eric, you've cracked what most a lot of people will spend months and years trying to get to. But exactly, this is exactly it. And and I think part of this is it's sometimes a freeze moment because you can kind of sense the middle's going to be messy. I mean, if anyone here has experienced like a divorce or a really painful ending to a relationship, we all know what that period of that ending and sort of coming out the other side is like. It's chaos, even for the most seasoned scented practitioner. It's chaotic, even if that chaos is internal. um I don't have to hide that all the men here have on this call have witnessed me in this chaos. uh and, and even with all that support, there were days that went sideways. but but it had to be confronted, because if not, I would not get the gift of evolving into purpose, path. And honestly, as my therapist said to me at one point, she's like, Ari, this is the kind of stuff that makes people sick. This is the kind of stuff that will begin to show up in the body as pretty gnarly illnesses.
It's pretty profound. I mean, the stifling of something like that, it's rot, right? It's causing rot in the body, right? If it's time to let it go, what happens in nature, right? Like, I try to keep cut beautiful flowers here in the apartment, and what happens over time is they start to decompose. They start to actually wither and pass away. And I attach. I'm like, oh, I want to hold on to these for as long as I can. And so I'm changing the water and I'm trying to keep them as fresh as I can. But there comes a time that the smell becomes intolerable and I have to deal with it. And if I don't deal with it, that smell will get worse and worse and more unpleasant and more unpleasant. And then I have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And what's
And
on
this
the
might be a
others? Oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
So I was just going to bring the conversation to what happens next, right? Like at
Yeah.
that moment of like, what is the opposite of death, of ending?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
we've got an ending that has to happen, and then a threshold that we have to pass through in order to let go of that ending, move into liminal, move into the messy middle, the uncomfortableness. In what goal? Like what are we trying to get to on the other side?
Mm. Okay. So now we get into the juicy stuff, right? Okay. If we go into a couple of sort of cultural or mythological pieces around this, right? So in a lot of cultures, when you come to a crossroads, there are guardians. So Hecate is one of them, right? Crossroads goddess has a set of keys. Another tradition that has this is the African tradition. So uh, of the Ifa tradition is out of the Yoruba culture. They have an entity, a deity called Eshu. Now in Haiti, it's Papa Legba. Now this is another crossroads entity, also carries keys, right? But what all these crossroads entities do when you come there, and this is why like Christianity kind of out of its fear of it, bastardize it to say it's the devil. This is why you have all these things about the devil at the crossroads. I come and make a bargain. I get what I want, and I give up my soul. And it's a misunderstanding of crossroads deities, right? Because what happens when you go to the crossroads, the guardians will ask you. This is really specific. They'll be, what door are you willing to close for me to open the gate that you want? And this is really specific because the what the myth is trying to say to you is the thing that you are holding on to so tight is actually really small. It's a door. And are you willing to close it for me to open up a gate to all the amazing stuff that's waiting for you on the other side, right? And very often when you are at this moment, oh yeah,
But how do we know it's amazing? And like,
oh
what if that gate doesn't have bars? What if that gate is a solid mass? How do I know what's on the other side? What is on the other side?
yeah, now we're in deeper waters about faith, right? So now we're in the deeper waters of trust, surrender, and also I may ask the question of myself or whoever: "I- Will it get any more? Will it get worse than this? Right? Maybe, but there might be a lesson there too. But are you willing to just stay here then for the rest of your life? Like, what is at stake? What is at stake? And so actually, okay, now you've gotten me to the mantra that I run my life with, right? So a number of years ago, I came to a thing of like, okay, all I care about is when the moment comes, because I don't know, right? I might get off the call after this and walk out the door and it's over, right? I don't know. But all I care about is when it comes in the split second that I might have, I can go, you know what? I'm good. Show me what's next. Now, if that's what I want, how do I orient every decision in my life around that? And sometimes the choices for that are really hard. They're really hard. And also, when we make these choices, we often think it's a we're wired to be what's the word, binary for some reason, right? It's nonsense. Because there is always a third way. And so this is why you'll see, like, if it's Eshu or Papa Legba or even Shiva, we have a Trishul, we have a trident. And the trident is because one of the things is there is a third way that is hidden to you. And if you are willing to be open, to have faith into what's coming next, the third way will be revealed.
Okay. Well, let's be really specific. The first way is stay. Second way is go through, or what are the? Let's
Yeah,
count them out.
that could be one variant of it, right? Or it could be that you think, I'll give you, you think like relationship. I either stay in it or end it, right? Um, but there's often a third way.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's like the job. I leave, I quit, or I
So
find something new. Yeah.
the two paths are the binary: I stay or go,
Hmm.
right? And then there's
Yeah.
a third.
Yeah. Yeah. And the third is one you don't know. You normally can't quite picture what it's like, and it gets revealed to you. Now, you ask the question of like, okay, to what end, right? I cross. There's a messy part, right? That's where the ferryman's there for you. Look, the ferryman's inside of you.
Mhm.
You know, I believe this phrase I got given of "you're the book." I think in our world, a lot of us like to keep seeking, and study is great, but trust that. And this is why I say the body
Mhm.
knows.
Yeah. You are the book.
Um,
I love that.
you're the
So
book.
let's recap here. So um the just trying to keep the characters straight. I'm just trying to keep the set straight, right? So
Thank you.
there is a threshold. At the threshold, there are guardians
Mhm.
who will confront you with what are you letting go of in order for me to open this door that will allow you to pass into the thresholds to go through the crossroads where you may meet a
You're at the
ferryman.
crossroads.
You're at the
You're already at
crossroads.
the crossroads.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yes.
cross the threshold into liminal space.
Limit. Okay, so the guardian is at the threshold. If you say, I'm going to close this door and I'm going to go through that gate, you may meet a ferryman who will take you through the liminal space.
Hmm. Hmm. Or the gate might open and automatically, right? You get what you want. You work through that. I mean, this is not it's not set in stone, right? But
Mhm.
in general, yes, right. I'm going to open some, because it's not an opening to the immediate gift. There's probably some sort of journey towards that gift. Um, and then you go on the voyage, you go on the trip. I mean, we know this model in the hero's journey, if we're really being honest, right?
Mhm.
You made an offer, adventure is given to you. What normally happens, you're like, I don't want this. I don't want to do this.
Mhm.
And then what happens is something really pushes you because it hurts or it's friction. And you're like, okay, I got to go.
Mhm.
And so you go. And, and, that liminal space could be 2 months, could be 30 seconds, could be 5 years. There's no. And then what happens is, and that, you're sitting in something, but what happens is, and in my work, I talk about it as eros, right? I talk about it as the creative energy. So nothing sexual. We're talking about this life force, this creative energy that begins to perk its head up, and it begins to slowly show you what is being reborn out of this new threshold into a new chapter.
The little
And then
cherub in
it's
the Cabbage Patch
right.
just popped.
And then look, and then at some point the cycle starts again.
Mhm.
This is a series of the many deaths of living, as we have right up behind you. It's, that really is it.
S- Do we ever get comfortable with death? Like, I know you said that, like, you walk outside and, like, anything could happen to you,
Mhm,
and you've kind of accepted a
mhm,
lot of that. I've also had my own relationship with death. Being on a motorcycle, I was able to
mhm.
really come to terms with, like, oh, my life is inches away from me.
Yeah.
And so I stopped looking at death as an enemy and I started looking at death as a friend.
Yeah.
And I would literally, every time I got on my motorcycle, I would say, okay, death, let's go. Like, you're riding in my sidecar. I didn't have a sidecar, my
Mm.
metaphorical sidecar.
I wish you had a sidecar. That would be great. Yeah.
But there were still moments that I'm like, death still scares me. Giving up this thing still scares me. Moving through a crossroads still scares me. So, do we ever get comfortable with death? With the many deaths that we experience throughout our lives?
Probably not 100%. And I don't think I think that's also human. Because again, I think if you are 100% no fear of death, like then my suspicion is, I could be wrong. This is just me, right? My hunch then is that there might be a situation where you're a little disconnected from life. That maybe there's nothing quite present here that is making you feel connected to life.
Mm,
And one thing I always say is that the practice of being close to death, some people got, I got friends who are like, they're kind of morbid. You're sitting all day, walking around, like all your stuff's around death, and it's quite like, and I'm like, no, because actually, if the people who know me really well also know, like, I'm the guy who's like sharing stupid memes on the internet. Um, as some of you know, like, I'll come out of spiritual practice and put on Sabrina Carpenter, but it's because what I've come to learn is the connection to death gives you such a deep appreciation and gratitude for all of this, because you begin to realize, like, wow, if I don't know when this ends, then I better enjoy every single moment, even if it sucks, even in the most painful parts that I've been through, as all of you have here. I've been still able to go, but you know what? Like, still better than not getting to taste this. One day I won't.
mhm.
Yeah.
It's the love of life.
Yeah. And, every great lineage says, right? Look, it's all illusion. None of it is real, but you still have to participate. You chose to come here to participate and learn something. And so you got to participate.
Mhm. I love that. And so, as we get near to this ending, um, for someone who's still afraid of what's ending,
Yeah.
whatever it is in their life that is coming to a close, that they're really afraid to allow to end, what would you want them to remember?
I'm a bit moved by that question. I want you to remember that it's okay to feel that, because it means you have lived in a way that even you can't see right now is so tapped into life. So it's okay. And my hope is that you have community that you can go to reflect back to you that it's okay. And my hope is that you can begin to see that your body, whether it's through yoga, through movement, but in using your body, you will be able to work through and find your comfort at beginning to cross over and walk through.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing your presence and emotion to that answer was beautifully articulated, and I felt it, and I'm going to echo it. I hope that too for people. All right. Do we have questions from the audience? John or Tim? Well, let's end with a practical then. What simple embodied practice would you recommend somebody to help them work with grief or change or letting go? I know we talked about wailing, but wailing's not always available.
Yeah.
What other embodied
Yeah.
practices?
One of the simplest things that I can recommend is to just sit for 5 minutes and to just breathe through your nose, into your belly, and out your mouth, and allow for whatever comes to come. And you do that for 5 minutes, and then you put on the song that you like, and you dance your fucking ass off, and then you go eat something that you love. On the hardest days that I've had, before I even knew what embodiment meant, this was something somehow that I did. And it's kept me in good stead.
I love that advice. It continues to go back to like embrace and enjoy life. Death is going to happen. Endings are going to happen. It's just part of life. Doesn't stop it from being scary. Doesn't stop it from being unknown and full of fear. That's okay. It's okay to fear it. Revere it. Respect it. Honor it. And at the same time, honor life.
Yeah.
Give yourself those moments to breathe deep, allow whatever is going to flow through you to flow through you, and then nourish yourself.
Exactly.
Decompose whatever needs to be decomposed. Throw out the flowers, and then go buy yourself some new flowers. All right. I'm feeling complete with this conversation. Is there anything else you would like to leave with?
Just to say that for any of you who are listening to this recording, that you have a beautiful opportunity to explore this on this platform that, Tim and Eric have created here. Um, this is the accessibility of what these two men have created for you to tap into the body and begin to explore this is unparalleled. And so my invitation would be to take advantage of that.
Thank you. That's very kind. And for anyone that is looking for a guide through a tough transition, please reach out to Ari, work with him, let him be the ferryman that can take you through the very scary waters to the other side. He'll make them a little less scary. All right. Well, this is usually Tim's job, but I'll do it tonight. I'll take us out. So let's feel our feet on the ground. And it is with deep appreciation and gratitude. I thank everyone that attended this, that was in this space. I thank Ari for bringing his wisdom, knowledge, and his presence, emotion, beautiful to witness. And there is a hope and a prayer that as you go through the many deaths of your own life, that you meet it with reverence, you meet it with bravery, you meet it with joy, honor it, honor and respect all that it is, all that will come, and promise, 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 promise that on the other side will be something, a new thing, a new rebirth that'll most likely be okay. And with these words, our container is open but not broken. Aho.